All right, thanks for joining everyone. My name's Kevin Hu. I am a member of Team Firstly, and in case you don't know, I wanted to introduce Firstly real quick. Firstly is a career support community for first-generation college students, professionals, as well as allies. And our goal is to make it easier for first-gen students to access the resources they need to get from college to career and beyond as well. And so we've created this speaker series primarily to demystify career development and really to help others understand what kind of career fields are available and how exactly you can break into those fields. So a little bit of info on the structure of the event. We're going to have a panel in the beginning, just a set of questions that I'm going to ask Jenna. And afterwards, you're going to have some time to be able to interact with Jenna directly and just ask questions to her. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the chat during the first portion. Otherwise, you're still going to have some time to ask them later on if you don't get a chance to ask those questions or if we move on. So with that said, I want to just briefly introduce Jenna. Jenna is a first generation college student, now a professional. She is a consultant at Deloitte Consulting in their digital practice. And I'm going to let Jenna talk a little bit more about this, once we ask her as well. But I kind of want to pass this off to Jenna. So I know you're, first gen. I'm kind of curious. Could you talk a little bit about like the background of your family and what that looks like in your general experience?
Yeah. Thanks for the nice intro, Kevin. I am a first generation student. In addition to that, I'm actually a first generation American. So I was born in Vietnam, Saigon, and I came here at about the age of 3. I have lived in Southern California my whole life, and I went to UC Irvine. So I see some of our anteaters on the call. So nice to see you guys. And right after college, I went to work for Deloitte Consulting. I've been there for about 3 years now.
Awesome. Just kind of curious. So, I know that when you meet a lot of people in the professional world, it's hard to know that they're an actual person. So what I'm just kind of curious about, and I'm sure everyone is curious about as well, is what are some of your interests that don't align professionally or just personal interests?
Yeah, I like to say that, I'm a homebody based on hobbies, but I'm actually a major extrovert. So I actually can't stand not hanging out with people for more than like 2 days. It's really bad. I get sad being at home, but I do a lot of like homebody activities. Like I really like just like decorating. I recently just got a new place. I've been doing a lot of kind of DIY interior decorating. I do a lot of cooking. But I like to cook for my friends and things like that. And I spend a lot of time at stores like Home Goods, Target. I just kind of browsing around, looking at stuff. So pretty kind of common, almost like suburban activities when I'm not on the road or traveling.
Yeah, that's great. And that kind of reminds me of this meme, what you said about how like you go to Target for some like hand soap or something, you leave with like a microwave and like a couch. So is
Oh,
that
no,
you, Jenna?
that's absolutely me. Target was my savior when COVID first started because everything was closed except for grocery stores, and Target was in that sort of category. So I think I went there once every other day.
It's nice. I mean, that's a good hobby to have, just browsing Target. It's fun. Okay, so just want to ask one more personal-ish question before diving into the career panel stuff. What is one thing that you really miss about college?
Oh my goodness. I mean, it's been 3 years since I've been in college. And I know, Kevin, you're at Berkeley right now. You went back to school. I always tell this to people. The one reason that I want to go back to college so bad is to have that sort of experience where you can just spontaneously hit up your friends and say, hey, let's just go to dinner, let's just go hang out or go study here and there, and not have to think about all the hundreds of other things that are happening. Because usually when you're working, it's very standard, right? Like people are tired, you have to plan around their schedule, you have to hit them up like 2 weeks in advance just to get anything going. And that sort of spontaneity of being in college and having a friend group around you and people that are just down to hang out is just like one of those really awesome experiences that once, I've entered this sort of adult world, it's not as available to me anymore. So I definitely miss that.
Yeah, I mean, 100% agree, right? It's like once you graduate, people have jobs and like kids and like houses or something. So, so many competing priorities. But yeah, I mean, if you really do miss college that much, business school is a great time to kind of like re-enter that. So, I mean, just throwing it out there for folks that are interested. But yeah, I know I've been talking to Jenna about like business school before. So, you know.
Yeah, and I mean, for all the other participants on the call that are in college, obviously COVID's a difficult time in order to kind of have that sort of similar college experience. But on top of that, just the opportunity to really explore in your sort of career development in college. I know sometimes it feels like college is sort of this straight shoot path where you have to be very focused on whatever goals you have. But college is really this time to explore, right? To try out different classes, to try out different kind of like career areas, because you're still a student and you have that sort of student card. There's internship, offers available to you and opportunities, and a lot of that you don't get as like an adult once you leave that world. So I think having that sort of safeguard of being a college student is also really, really nice as well.
Yeah, I mean, like to your point, Jenna, I totally agree that college is just a great time to explore different professions, different career paths. But with that said, I think that kind of allows us to pivot more into the professional stuff. Could you talk a little bit more about what consulting is and your profession? Just because I know a lot of folks, might not understand what consulting is. It is somewhat of like a general term, so would love to hear what you think that is and like your perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the way I think about consulting is consulting is this category of careers, which I like to call professional services. So as a consultant, I work for a company, I work for Deloitte, but my job primarily is centered around working for other companies as a representative of Deloitte. So I am a consultant to all the other clients that I work with. Consulting is a very broad term that essentially means offering advice and being able to help clients. Very, very broad. Myself in particular, I'm primarily a consultant within strategy and digital. So I work on implementing digital products or help with companies that are looking to kind of revamp their digital tools and customer experiences that they're offering to their end customer. And I come in to help with those sort of implementations and things like that. But the consulting industry can really range when it comes to what you can consult at. So some of you guys might have heard of, like management consulting, there's like healthcare consulting, there is human resources consulting, you name it. There's consultants in every single field because, there's industries everywhere and people are looking for those sort of specialists to help offer advice to their companies and help them really kind of think outside the box when it comes to solving their company's problems. So essentially, I'm just a problem solver for various companies and the various clients that I work for.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And if I could try to paraphrase what you said, you're essentially saying that like consulting is just, it's super general. And all that really means is someone who has like expertise and they're able to like come in and like advise like a different group, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, however, you can get more granular in between like which field you're specifically advising on. Like for your instance, it's, around digital. So like customer experiences and like using technology systems and whatnot. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly correct. Like I like to think, when I started my career as a consultant, I started in sort of digital products and experiences. But even in that sort of realm, I was very much a generalist because I consulted for technology companies, for retail companies, for fintech. And as I sort of grew in my career, I focused more and more narrowly on very specific things. So now I'm primarily in the fintech field. I work a lot with fintech clients or financial services clients. So in consulting, at least from, I think, an undergraduate level, what I've seen primarily is people start off as what we like to call a generalist. So sort of a jack of all trades and start kind of narrowing down, as soon as you start understanding, what industries you're very interested in doing or what types of consulting you're interested in doing. And you have the opportunity to do all of that. I think as a consultant, if you're at a big firm that has a lot of different projects that they're working on and different clients, you'll have the opportunity to try that out.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me in terms of like, you come in as a generalist and you get more and more specific. But I'm kind of curious, like even before landing that role as a consultant, I'm kind of curious, like what made you think that you would excel in consulting, or what made you want to get into consulting?
Yeah, I love that question because it always makes you reflect on like why I even did this in the first place. And Kevin, you and I had chatted about, what kind of questions to bring up in today's session. And I had to do a lot of reflection. And what I realized was when I was in college, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I remember going into college and thinking, oh, I want to be in business because I just want to wear a business suit and work in some tall skyscraper one day. And that was literally it, guys. I had no idea what business actually entailed. And, as an undergraduate, you take classes in marketing and finance and accounting. And I think at a certain period throughout my time in college, I was interested in doing any one of those options, right? Finance, accounting, or marketing. I had no idea what consulting even was. So I eventually kind of landed on this idea of consulting through my peers and through some of the kind of recruiting events that had happened to show up on campus. And what I sort of realized when I had talked to professionals that were working in consulting was this is actually a job for someone that doesn't know what they want to do, because it's a job that offers you the experience to try out a lot of different things. And as an example, in my 3 years of being a consultant, I've had to work as a marketing advisor for a consumer products company. I've had to work as a project manager for a technology company. I've had to work as like a strategy and ops advisor for a financial services company. So it almost gives you this opportunity to try out these different segments and these different kind of career opportunities within business. Because, sometimes I'm working with marketing teams, sometimes I'm working with CFOs, sometimes I'm working with CTOs. It could be, like product managers. So it's a great kind of way to learn about where I eventually, what I eventually want to do when I quote unquote grow up. And I think, that's still a sort of exploration for me.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. So just kind of like giving your curiosity and wanting to try new things and explore, it sounds like consulting is a good profession for you in that regard.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a great like stepping stone profession because it gives you this opportunity to try some different things before you say, okay, like I know where I want to go, and then I'm going to focus down this sort of path.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. One thing I'm kind of curious about is, a lot of people, folks that I've spoken to, think that consulting, or say consulting, is a very prestigious profession, kind of hard to get into. I'm kind of curious, what were the steps that you took in order to get into that profession from undergrad?
Yeah, I definitely think I was very lucky to be surrounded by individuals that had already been in the profession, been in the profession, and had gone to Deloitte. As some background, Deloitte had already recruited at UC Irvine when I was there. Although they didn't recruit many positions, it was nice to know that there were alumni at the school that I could talk to. And something that I did was, look up the alumni on LinkedIn and just say, hey, I go to UCI, I'm an anteater. I see that you're at Deloitte. I would love to learn more. And having those sort of conversations to get a better idea of what I'm getting myself into, and actually ask for their advice in terms of what they did. And then ultimately attend all the different events that were there, in terms of all the different recruiting events they had and such. And I definitely think, or I'll definitely say my experience of getting into consulting was not a straight shot. My first kind of recruiting cycle that I did, I don't think it led anywhere because I had no idea really what consulting was. I was kind of just going to the events to go to the events, and it wasn't very fruitful. But I think having met some of the professionals at the company in my first time around, and then kind of better prepping myself professionally, gaining a little bit more experience, whether it be through student organizations or just like internships that I did. The second time around was much better, and that's when I got my offer for an internship.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. You kind of talked about how you went through this process of like hitting people up on LinkedIn and just joining different club opportunities in order to learn more about the profession. And
Mhm.
it sounds like that was ultimately what helped you land that role successfully. One thing I'm kind of curious about is how early did you start that entire process? Because I would imagine we have different students who are starting their professional careers or like their career journeys at different stages, whether like as a freshman or like a junior. So kind of curious about like your journey and how that started and the progression of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was my sophomore year when I had first learned about consulting, and that's when I went to my first Deloitte consulting event. And I tried out, I applied for a role, not actually like a job role, but it was more of a summer leadership program, which was very prominent and pretty normal in a lot of different consulting or different professional services companies. And I went to several events there, and I didn't have any sort of professional experiences at that time. So that was where I was kind of just learning about Deloitte and understanding what I was getting myself into. And then my junior year, the fall of my junior year, is when I tried again to apply for the internship position. So I would say I basically started in my sophomore year, but I don't think I really geared up and ramped up a lot of the things that I was doing in terms of being very active with outreach. Actually, going online and doing a lot of research in terms of what consulting really was, what the different types of consulting really was. That was all sort of the summer before I went back to school in fall and said, hey, this is exactly what I want to do. I would say probably like a few months beforehand.
Okay. Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, so it sounds like, yeah, you started your career journey as early as like sophomore year when you're trying to shoot your shot at these summer leadership programs that the company has. Um, I guess like, was that surprising to you that, you had to start that early in order to get that kind of consulting job?
I think so. Well, surprising and non-surprising in some ways, because I I had no idea what the path of getting a job was like. I think um, a part of me was very naive as a college student to think that, I could probably just apply and send in a resume with a cover letter um, through like a LinkedIn post and just, sit and wait and hope that they would call me back. And very quickly I learned like that is definitely not how a lot of college recruiting actually goes, right? For those that are lucky enough to have certain companies recruit on their campus, it involves going to all these different events, networking with a lot of individuals, and then also going out of your way to do more and more outreach to learn more about the position that you're interested in, and meet more people from the company. And for students that are even trying to go for companies that may or may not even recruit on their campus, that's an even bigger step of trying to source contacts that they somehow might have a connection with, and then sending some of those cold emails and looking for that outreach. So I think it was very interesting and almost like a shock to me, the amount of work that went in. So when people kind of talk about breaking into consulting, the way I think about it was like, I felt that every job that I was trying to apply for almost had that sort of thing. It was never so straightforward as to, let me just apply and wait, because I don't think I've ever heard back from any job that I applied, cold applied on LinkedIn or anything and got it. So it's definitely much more involved, and you have to be very, very active in your career search.
Yeah, I mean, completely agree with you. It's almost like there's this hidden curriculum of things you need to do in order to access that career or like finally get there. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I'm sure we have folks from various stages in terms of their career journeys on this call. Just kind of want to transition this a little bit. I am curious, what kinds of opportunities on campus would you recommend students to pursue if they want to, be a consultant later on? Or like, in other words, what clubs or activities can they join in order to be a competitive candidate once they do recruit for those consulting opportunities?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, what I'll caveat with this, there is no cookie cutter mold for a consultant. I'll give you some examples. Like, I have worked with consultants who majored in piano as their undergrad, right? Or who majored in French as their undergrad, or who were athletes. And they might have majored, I know an athlete who majored in, I think it was like sports medicine or something. So, consulting or consultants come from kind of all different backgrounds. And the reason for that is if you really think about the consulting industry, you're coming in to help people solve a problem. People that are all the same do not, contribute to a great team of helping solve problems, because you need people with a lot of kind of different perspectives and different ways of thinking about how to approach problems. So what we really look for in consultants, I think one of the biggest things is not really your technical skills. There might be certain types of consulting, like for example, if you're going for something that's very technical, or like software development heavy, you might obviously need some of those technical skills in terms of understanding like technical architecture and things like that. But for more of a generalist consultant role, I think one of the most important things is being able to present yourself in front of a client. If you put it in the client's perspective, they are hiring, a very well-known company. They are paying a lot of money for these resources, and they want to see the people that come and help advise them, and the people that they're trusting as advisors to their company be able to present themselves and do their job, right? Whether you are a consultant who's been working there for 15 years or a consultant who joined 2 months ago, they want to be able to have a conversation with you, feel that, you know what you're doing, about their industry, and you're able to present yourself professionally. So going back to your question, Kevin, about like what kind of organizations and opportunities, I think it's actually any opportunities where you have a chance to be able to kind of showcase your communication skills, showcase your presentation skills, and also just execute and lead a team, right? Because that's really what we do in consulting. We are constantly kind of switching around teams, working with different people, but everyone is responsible for whatever piece that they're contributing to the project. So it's any kind of organizations where you're able to kind of have a lot of responsibility for the activities that you're doing. So that can be, cultural organizations, that can be professional business organizations. It could be any kind of fun related organizations, sports organizations. I think you can kind of showcase those skills anywhere. But obviously there's also very consulting related organizations, such as like, I know there's like 180 Degrees Consulting, which is, I think, a national organization, which are student orgs that are geared to helping students learn about the consulting industry by placing them in teams where they do cases. So I think that's also a very great way to learn about more of the technical skills of being a consulting in terms of like working on cases and creating deliverables and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And to kind of sum that up, it sounds like there's no one club that you can join to be a consultant. Rather, they look for general leadership skills, which you can acquire by, like you said, different cultural organizations, different interest groups, but really diving deep into that kind of organization and like showing leadership and, growing within that organization. That's kind of what they look for, right?
Absolutely. And it's like quality over quantity too, right? You can be in a lot of organizations, but to us, or what I really look for when I'm looking at people's resumes or at a candidate, is what did you contribute to that organization? What initiatives did you lead? And what changes or what improvements did you bring to that organization? And that really all ties back to, being a consultant, right? We're measured on the value that we deliver and what we were able to do for the client, and in the end, how it impacted the client, whether it be more revenue or whether it be smoother operations. So it all relates to that sort of same concept.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing that, Jenna. So it looks like we're at the top of the hour. I want to, allow the participants to have some time to ask questions to you directly. So I'm going to go ahead and just change the setting. And so folks on the call should be able to unmute themselves now. If you have any questions for Jenna, feel free to just unmute and ask directly.
Oh, I think I see a hand from Lucian. Are you able to unmute yourself, Lucian? Oh, Kevin, I don't think they're able to unmute themselves.
Oh, now I can. Thank you. Hi, Jenna. I was really curious as to if you were to go back right now as a reflection of, as working in the industry for quite a while, would you still continue to want to pursue technology consulting, or would you have been interested in pursuing different fields or a different type of consulting?
Oh, that's a great question. I absolutely think I would still go down this path of pursuing consulting, just because I reflect back on my 3 years here, and it's given me tremendous opportunities in terms of just the different projects I've worked on and the clients I've been able to interact with. So I wouldn't change that one bit. However, I will say this. I think one of the things that I would have changed about my college experience is what I did in college. So I was a business administration major. I did, purely business administration classes, marketing, finance, and accounting. And that's all I focused on. I was mainly only in business organizations. I spent most of my time within the business community. And I reflect back on that and I think, man, I really wish I would have just done a minor in something really, very different, very interesting, or, at least taking classes outside of my major, or joined organizations outside of my major, because having, now that I'm in the business world, what I realize is not every single client that you interact with was a business student, right? You interact with people that are obviously from all different parts of the world. They might have majored in very different studies. They come from very different backgrounds. And it's almost nice to be able to relate to someone outside of like a business setting, whether it be like, oh, I did this sport in college, or I was a part of these organizations, or I studied, something very interesting like music or a language and things like that. So that's probably my one regret if I were to have one.
I mean, I think that's pretty interesting. So kind of like knowing, if you had known that you could have taken like a non-traditional approach and still been a consultant, you would have like seized that opportunity, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Jenna. I see another hand raised from Linnell. If you want to unmute and just ask your question, feel free.
Thank you so much. Jenna, I have two questions for you. I'm working with a student now who is a student of color, a low-income, first-gen student of color at a predominantly white institution. Mm-hmm. She's a sophomore. She's, again, starting to talk about consulting in the same way that you did, kind of trying to figure out what it's all about. She's at the early stages. And one suggestion that was made to her was that she join one of the consulting clubs on campus. And she is struggling with that a little bit because it's basically all, kind of mostly, comfortable or affluent white people. Mm. Do you have any suggestions? Are there any alternatives that maybe aren't institutionally focused? What kind of advice can I give her?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that comes to mind with this particular student, I would say, and this is for everyone on the call, is to really take advantage of all the different conferences and programs that corporations offer. So that could be, there's a lot of programs around diversity. And I know at Deloitte, I help run one for the UCI community. We do a diversity mentorship program that focuses on students of color, first generation students, students of low income. And we primarily look for students in these communities at UCI to kind of help them. And I know nationwide and across different corporations, there's so many of these different programs and opportunities that usually come around, whether it be throughout the year or it's usually 2 or 3 days in the summer. So I would say do some research on those and really recommend that the student seizes those opportunities, because I think that's a really great way to kind of get your foot in the door and learn about all these different industries, whether it be consulting or it could be a specific company and things like that. I know a lot of areas offer that. And then the other sort of advice that I would have is, if she is, and I apologize if it wasn't a she, I might have misheard, but if the student is finding it difficult to kind of get into a community of their own, what I always say is, take the initiative to start your own. This is something that Kevin and I did when we were back in college, right? We felt that there was a need and a gap within the community for a certain organization. And because we saw this gap, we figured, well, instead of trying to kind of, figure out how to kind of work out this gap and things like that, let's just find a way to fulfill the gap by starting our own organization. And it sounds like, if this student is motivated and they want to be a consultant and they really want to kind of create that community, I would recommend they do that as well.
Yeah, and I see a follow-up question from Linnell in the chat. Do consulting companies tend to offer these programs at smaller liberal arts colleges? And I'm assuming she's referring to the conferences that you talked about, Jenna.
Yeah, absolutely. So typically these conferences, so there's going to be a mix. You'll see a lot of different ones. Sometimes they are going to be college specific, but also there's going to be national programs as well where they hosted, and this was back in the times when there's travel. Usually these national programs you can apply online, and different organizations will list their application dates and their program specifications, and they usually fly students into a specific area to kind of attend that program, and these are going to be open to all students nationally. They might also include at the end of the program, depending on what kind of program it is, there might be something that we like to call a blitz or a super day, which allows students to then kind of interview for any role that's offered in correlation with that program, whether it be an internship or a full-time offer after that. Yeah, no
Thanks,
problem.
Jenna.
Yep.
All right, I see another hand from Xin Yuan. Feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks for your sharing. You mentioned that you are working as a technology consultant in Deloitte in digital practice. I'm also very interested in digital practice, so I wonder if I could learn more info regarding this specific practice. For example, what kind of clients you are working for as a consultant in Deloitte, like in retail industry or in financial industry or in technical industry?
Yeah. So unfortunately, due to kind of confidentiality, I can't reveal the actual names of my clients, but I will say you've definitely probably shopped for, some of the clients I work with. You've seen them on the news. You have interacted with them at some point in time. I think within Deloitte, Deloitte as a company as a whole, we basically work with almost all of the Fortune 500 and kind of smaller companies or companies, outside of the Fortune 500. So just a lot of opportunities to work with clients in all these different areas. And the projects will very much differ based on, what the client's needs are. I've worked with clients that are a little bit more brick and mortar in terms of retail, and they're really looking to expand on their digital experiences, right? To really push them into the new age and be very competitive with a lot more of the product offerings that you're seeing today with companies being purely digital. So some of my projects have included kind of how do we reimagine the client experience from a brick and mortar store to be more of a digital experience, and how do we enable them and provide them with the necessary technology and infrastructure to do that. So, that's an example of some of the projects that I've worked on. Other examples include kind of just thinking about more of the strategy of how we're going to redesign a company's entire tech stack to kind of move it to the cloud. And a lot of those projects are, they're very massive for the client themselves, because it involves a lot of data, a lot of sensitive client information, and it's kind of a make or break for a lot of our clients in order to be competitive in the market today.
Yeah, it is very insightful. How did you ramp up those new knowledge? Because you mentioned digital transformation and like a cloud computing, but I think it requires a different kind of knowledge. How do you learn them quickly?
Yeah, and that's a really great question. So the learning ramp for being a consultant, I would say, is steep. And that is one of the more difficult parts of the job, because you're always being placed on new projects. They can be in very different industries, and you need to first learn about, okay, what are the ins and outs of this industry? What are the challenges that a client in this industry faces? And then you also have to learn about what exactly are we trying to do for the client here. I've been in a position where I'm doing a lot of different projects. So every single project that I'm on, I have to kind of ramp up. But I will say this, Deloitte has a lot of resources in terms of kind of helping consultants just have all the information that they need in order to kind of start on the job. And lastly, no project that you're ever starting on, you're doing by yourself. So a lot of these more technical projects and large scale projects, I've always been placed in a team of, 5, 10, and at one time, like 200 people. So you have a lot of different resources to kind of help you out and help you ramp up. So it's more of, taking the initiative and taking the time to kind of learn about everything that's going on, knowing what questions to ask, and being willing to sort of ask those questions in order to know exactly what you're trying to do on the project.
It's very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks for that question. I see a raised hand from Jonathan, but before that, I did see a question in the chat. So Jenna, as a first-gen student, what type of challenges did you encounter in regards to guidance and lack of resources? And what steps did you take to overcome those kinds of challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say, having been a first generation student, not having anyone in my family have gone into business, it was very vague to me what you could do in business. And I mentioned this before. I had no idea that consulting was even an industry. And, for other industries such as accounting or marketing or finance, your kind of general business industries, to me, those were just sectors. I had no idea what kind of jobs you could actually pursue in those industries. And I think that's one of the challenges, because when you don't know what exactly you're trying to go for, you're kind of just shooting in the dark. And then the second part is just knowing what you need to do in order to even get a job, right? Obviously, it isn't just kind of submitting your resume and hoping that they call you back, but it's doing a lot of stuff to kind of prep yourself, whether it be realizing that, you need to join student organizations, you need to pick up on different internship opportunities, or if you're working part-time, how you then kind of communicate your transferable skills from your part-time experiences into something that's a little bit more meaningful for your actual resume. So a lot of that I didn't know about, but I think I was very lucky in terms of being able to reach out to my network and find a network of people that were willing to mentor me and guide me and use their experiences as kind of a model in terms of what I can do. When I had first joined college, I joined a organization, and I remember I met, a few juniors and seniors at the time. I was a freshman, and I thought, wow, I love everything that they're accomplishing. I think like it's so cool what they're doing with their internship opportunities. It's so cool what they're doing full time. They have all these like awesome experiences going for them. I don't know how I can be in their shoes one day, but I want to be in their shoes. And someone told me this the other day, but it was, you are basically the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I realized that when I was a senior and I was graduating college, I was in the exact same position of the people that I had looked up to, like in my freshman year of college. So I think it's very much, looking for role models, being willing to ask for help, and kind of leveraging all the different resources that you have. Because, in college, there are so many resources that are offered to you, but I think sometimes we overlook them because there's too many, right? So I would say, if you haven't reached out to your career center already, like reach out to your career center, see what they can do for you. If you haven't joined a student organization already, go ahead and join one and talk to those students, talk to them about their experiences, how they got to where they are, and you might be able to learn a little bit more from that as well.
All right, thanks for that response, Jenna.
Yeah.
Jonathan, if you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question, feel free.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Jenna and Kevin, for this call. My question relates to sort of the, I guess, subfields that you were talking about earlier, Jenna. So like you named technology and then health and then like finance and some other ones.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I'm wondering how you were assigned those projects. Like, does your preference or like what you prefer, does that more come with time and seniority, like at your company? If you could shed light on, like, I guess, how you come to get assigned certain projects or industries, I would really be grateful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, and I'll speak to this in terms of my experience at Deloitte, but I always think it's based on 3 things. One is luck, one is your experiences, and one is your initiative. So luck being, there has to be a project available. Like, for example, if you're very interested in going to work for a retail client, there has to be a project and a role available for that client in order for that to happen, right? Second is your initiative. So when I first joined Deloitte, I was placed in the technology, media, and telecom industry. And I was doing some work within that sector for a little bit of time, but I really, really wanted to do retail consumer products. So it takes initiative. So I needed to figure out, okay, so who are the partners, who are the senior managers that are doing these sort of projects, what types of projects they're going to do. And similar to kind of recruiting, I reached out to them, let them know that I was interested. And I worked on sort of proposals and other white papers and different research projects for them before eventually a project opened up, and I had sort of that experience from doing, other kind of side projects for them. And then I was able to jump on to roles in like the RCP industry. So it's a mix of kind of 3 things, but if you have the initiative to do it and you're willing to kind of build your skills, to gear yourself up to be, a great consultant for a certain type of industry, it's definitely possible to switch.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yep.
Okay, so I do see one hand raised from Linnell. I think that might be from the previous question. If you have another question, feel free to unmute, but okay, looks like Linnell put her hand down. Does anyone else have any questions for Jenna? Okay, I'm going to take silence as no. So we could go ahead and start wrapping up. First of all, I want to say thank you so much, Jenna, for joining this speaker series and just sharing all your insight about, your experience as a first-gen student and how you were able to kind of get through that college career process and, become the consultant that you are today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, Kevin, thanks for having me. And thanks everyone for your awesome questions. It was great chatting with you guys today.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we kind of head out, just want to, express a couple of things about Firstly. So we'd love to know more about, how you perceived this speaker series and what kind of improvements we can deliver in order for you to have a better experience. So if there's more information that you want to know, we're going to send out a survey after this session and would love to just hear your feedback. And we'd also love to stay connected with you. So I'm going to go ahead and drop in some information on how we can stay connected. First and foremost, we have a Slack channel and community that we're really growing. And on the Slack community, you'll be able to have coffee chats with different professionals and students in the community, as well as participate in this professional development channel where you can post requests for mock interviews, informational interviews, etc. However, other folks in the community can support you. And of course, we have our Instagram and website available as well. So would love to stay connected and looking forward to seeing all of you on the community. All right, thanks for joining everyone. And thanks, Jenna.
Thanks everyone. Have a good evening.
Thanks everyone. Bye.